Good evening, everybody. Before we begin, I would like to give you this standard audience reminder, which is if there's a long silence during the talk, you can get up and dance around. No, please switch off your phones so that they don't ring during the reading. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm Sarah Prinius. I'm a bookseller here at Prairie Lights, and I am introducing today to you Victoria Forrester, who is here all the way from Los Angeles, California, to talk about her latest book, The Boy Who Knew Everything. But she's not originally from La La Land, Los Angeles. She's originally from northern Canada, where she grew up on a farm. And then somehow she got to Los Angeles and started as a screenwriter and as a movie director. And I don't know if you guys know how awesome that is, because first of all, it's a really hard business to break into, screenwriting and directing. Even more though for a woman in Hollywood. And so she has like mad props for doing that. After she was a screenwriter and a director, she started working on a screenplay about a girl who could fly. And she loved the characters so much that she started turning it into a book. And it was a book called The Girl Who Could Fly. That came out in 2008, and it was a huge bestseller. And now she is going to talk to you guys about the hotly anticipated companion book to The Girl Who Could Fly, which is called The Boy Who Knew Everything. Prairie Lights and Iowa City welcome Victoria Forrester.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first book tour. I am a really quiet person. I spend all my days in my room writing, not talking to people. This is very overwhelming to me. Has anyone else here a writer speak before? Been to an author thing? Good. If I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to ask you guys for help as I go. So Sarah's absolutely correct. I grew up in a log cabin in Canada, and it was pretty remote and pretty rustic. We didn't have heat in the house. It was my job to bring wood in for the fire. Not kidding you. I had to walk a mile to get to the school bus. It was definitely tough. We had a television. It had 4 television stations. One of them was in French. At 12 o'clock at night, I guess they didn't have anything to broadcast anymore, and so it would just go off, and there would be no television at all. And I know this is like going to be crazy and upsetting to some of you younger people, but there was no texting, there was no Minecraft, there was no Snapchat, there was no iPhones, there was nothing. But I did have there was something I had a lot of. This is my first time I've been in Iowa. I don't know if you have it here, so let me see. Just be really quiet for a sec. Yeah, you got it. I had a lot of silence. I spent a lot of time in silence and quiet. And there wasn't anyone who really lived around my farm, so I spent a lot of time reading and dreaming. And what I dreamed about is the stories I was reading, because they've affected me so deeply. There's something about stories for me that is so wonderful. I think when I read a story that's well written, I think it has the power to change the world. And it affects me because it makes me think and it makes me feel. And it's like my whole body just starts to vibrate. And when you think about it, it's like magic. Some writer somewhere, they may not even be alive, had this thought and this feeling, and they managed to take it and put it into words and give it to you. And then you have the same thought and feeling. You know, I can tell you that The Girl Who Could Fly, there is more of me in that book. You know so much about me just from reading that book. We have an intimate connection if you have read that book. And I feel like there's a lot of authors out there that I have an intimate connection with. Authors that I've read, like Lucy Maud Montgomery. For one, I grew up in her books and I just love them. So that's why I decided to become a storyteller, and I moved to Los Angeles. And the way Sarah describes it, it sounds very easy. It was, let me assure you, I spent a lot of time eating macaroni and cheese, spent a lot of time struggling, but what kept me going and sustained me through it was this dream of writing and telling stories that were just beautiful and would touch people the way I had been touched, which is why I wrote The Girl Who Could Fly. And I connect so strongly with Piper, who is spunky and full of imagination and a dreamer. Have most of you read The Girl Who Can Fly here? Most people? Okay, some of you. I'll just give you a quick synopsis of it just so you know. The girl who can fly lives in a remote community, and she can fly, and her parents are really embarrassed about this because they just feel like everything should be the same. And so they try to get her to hide it, and she refuses to hide it. And when she shows it off in a very public way, there's serious consequences to it. And she's sent away to this school where she meets this other character called Conrad Harrington III. And Conrad Harrington is a super genius. And that is who my next book is about. It's the boy who knew everything. It was interesting writing The Boy Who Knew Everything because Conrad is a really tricky character to get to know because he's a super genius. And I had to spend a lot of time understanding what a super genius was. I didn't know. I had to research it a lot. So let me give you a frame of reference for what a super genius is, because I didn't know. Maybe you know, but I didn't. There's something called the Stanford-Binet Standardized Intelligence Test. It's just a set of questions you have to do within a certain period of time. 2/3 of the population, if they're given this, will score between 85 and 115. That's like normal smarts. About 1 to 5% of the population will score between 125 and 137. Those are super smart people. Who are these people? Most presidents score above 120. John F. Kennedy scored 150. They say that John Quincy Adams scored 168, but I don't know when he took it, because I don't think they had the Stanford-Binet test back then. But that's what they said. So those are super. They're also surgeons and doctors, and those are the sorts of people that score in that range. But there's a level above that. It's people who score 160 and above. Who are those people? Those people are Albert Einstein, scored 160. Bobby Fischer, the chess champion, he scored 178. They say, and it was really hard to suss out the exact numbers, but they say that Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg were also in the like 160 range somewhere. So those are pretty smart people too. But wait, there's a level above super genius. There's only one person alive today who scores in that level. His name's Terence Tao. He's a professor at UCLA. He scored between 225 and 230. Can you imagine? I can tell you what, I'm not in that range. So Conrad, my character, is. When I was writing up his character description, I figured out he probably scored around 250. So when you're writing a character who has an intelligence of 250, how do you give them a problem that they don't solve like that? Like, it's hard to write them a story, because if you're giving them a problem, their problem is, oh, they have a problem and they solved it because they're so smart. They have another problem and they solved it because they're so smart. So I needed to give him a problem that he couldn't necessarily solve with his intelligence. And that was tricky, because there's hard to find. So I'm going to read you the first chapter of the book, and you can get a little bit to know about what's going on with Conrad and his problem, if that's okay. Okay. One problem with being a genius, and there are many problems, is that there is an overwhelming need on the part of adults to assess you, which is just a tricky way of saying that they want to figure out how exactly smart you are and why you are smart and where your smarts come from, and silently ponder the unspoken question that doesn't appear on any test but hangs heavily in the air. For heaven's sake, why can't I be as smart as you? Conrad Harrington III was in the middle of his third assessment of that day by yet another ninny who called herself an expert, and even though he was only 7 years old, he still had better things to do than answer her silly questions, which were not only boring, but took up a lot of his valuable time. In a candy store, there are 2 times as many jelly beans as there are gummy bears, and 4 times as many licorice whips as there are jelly beans, said the ninny. If there are 136 lollipops, and there is the same number of lollipops as there is licorice, how many jelly beans are there? 34. Okay, you build a house with 4 square walls, each with only a southern exposure. A bear shows up. What color is the bear? Let's pause for a sec. Can anyone get that question? I'll say it again. You build a house with 4 square walls, each with only a southern exposure. A bear shows up. What color is the bear? This is actually on a real intelligence test, this question, by the way. The bear's white. Okay, how many of each animal did Abraham take on the ark? None. Noah built the ark, says Conrad. In this number sequence, I don't know, says Conrad. I haven't finished the question. I still don't know. Conrad slumped in his chair and glared. Complete this number sequence. 1, 8, 27, 48, the ninny persisted. She introduced herself as Dr. Hilda Hamish, and she was sort of puckered. At some point in her life, probably when she was 5, her face pulled itself into a concerned question mark, and it had never managed to free itself in all the time that followed. I don't know, Conrad repeated, and looked out the window. The ninny pursed her lips anxiously. She had promised to complete her assessment that evening, but if she couldn't get the boy to cooperate, she would be stuck. He was a scrawny 7-year-old with a head that was too large for his body, serious eyes, and a sad mouth. At that moment, he had his arms crossed across his chest and a stormy look on his brow. She considered how to proceed and decided on a different tact. Your father told me that you liked numbers. Conrad turned on the poor woman. And did you believe my father? The ninny was taken aback, but instead of dismissing the question out of hand, she actually thought about it. Well, your father is a very smart man. No, my father is an important senator and he is powerful in Washington, but that doesn't make him smart. There is a difference. Oh, she said nervously, and looked down at her assessment test, trying to figure out which question to ask next and how to get this process back on track. So Conrad goes back through this with this person, and his father comes in, and his father wants to send him away because he's too smart, and he doesn't know what to do with him. And so Conrad is sort of sent off into the world, and his problem is that he doesn't know what to do without a father to father him, because his father can't accept the fact that he's so intelligent. It's a problem for him, because Conrad keeps doing things that he shouldn't do. So that's how I started the book about a super genius. Perhaps you might have some questions. I don't know.
Because this is on the broadcast, we have to use this mic.
Oh, okay.
So can you guys know? How's that? That's good. Okay, so if you guys have questions for Victoria, it's time to ask them. So who has a question? I have a question. First of all, the house is on the North Pole, right? Okay. You guys get that? The bear is white.
It's a polar bear.
House is on the North Pole.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question for you. One of the really cool and awesome things about these books is that the kids in the books, like Piper, who you'll meet if you read the book, and Conrad, and all the other kids that they are with, there are 11 kids, right?
Yeah.
They all have like superpowers, which are really cool, like power to control weather.
Yes.
What are some other powers?
There's a girl who's super fast, a girl who's super strong.
Kimber, right?
Yes. Oh, actually, no. Daisy, Kimber has electromagnetic.
Oh, right, Sparky.
She's Sparky.
Yeah.
There's a boy with X-ray vision. There's
And they're together, right?
kind of. Yeah. Yes.
Right.
There's a girl with telekinesis, Lily, and a boy who can heal.
And the weather boys,
And-
Jasper and then the weather boys.
And Ahmed and Nolan are weather changers. And Conrad, who's super smart. And who am I forgetting?
And then there's Jay, who's an adult.
Oh, Jay. He's the invisible man.
He's invisible. Okay, so my question for you, Victoria, is, and I bet it's a question, sort of like a question you get a lot. I bet a lot of people ask you, what power would you want to have? But I'm not going to ask you that question. The question I'm going to ask you is, she has a really cute little girl. I'm going to ask you, which power would you not want your daughter to have?
Oh, boy. The power to write? No. Boy. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want her to be able to fly away. That would be hard. That would be hard to have a child who's flying away all the time. I don't know what you would do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would I not want her to have? I think I wouldn't want her to be able to read people's thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good one.
Because that could be disturbing. You don't know what's going on in there.
It could be really disturbing. Yeah. That's a really good one. Are you? Maybe that'll lead to another question later. But so who else has a question? Oh, here we go. So I'm going to bring you the mic, and you talk into it so that the audience listening at home can hear your question.
Are you going to write another book that's with the same characters?
I am. I've begun writing that book already. I'm working on the title. I'm thinking it's going to be called The Girl Who Saved the World. It's going to start with a girl. It's going to be another female character. And both Piper and Conrad will be in the book, and all the other characters too.
I have to say the end of this book is in some ways really heartbreaking, and it begs for another book. It really does. It really does. So you're going to definitely be excited. Like when you finish this book, you're going to be like, oh, I can't wait to read the next book. Yeah. Okay, so another question. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go past over here.
How many books do you want in the series?
I think there's going to be 4 books. And I'm going to do, it's The Girl Who Could Fly, The Boy Who Knew Everything. I think the next one will be The Girl Who Saved the World. And the last book, which I know for sure, is called The Boy Who Lived Forever.
Oh. And if you read the second book, that's a really interesting title. Really interesting. Okay,
So I think there'll be 4.
Okay. Well, next question. Other questions. Oh, okay. Delia has a question.
So when you started, did you have it all planned out, the books in the series, or has it been an evolving process? Sounds like you had the last book figured out.
You know, it's so interesting, and I take my hat off to writers who, like J.K. Rowling, who know everything and have the last line and everything. Not me. I didn't really know I was going to write a second one. When the idea came up, I knew immediately what I wanted to write, and I didn't know all the characters in it though. It was definitely evolving. It's sometimes I feel like the books take on a life of their own, and I don't have much control over them sometimes.
So are you what we writers would call a pantser?
A pantser?
Have you heard that term?
No.
So a pantser is a person who writes basically by the seat of their pants, and they don't know how things are going to go. So would you describe yourself that way?
I wouldn't, actually. I would describe myself as very, I have a complete outline. I have complete everything. And then I start writing it, and I don't know what happens. It's just, it goes crazy.
So do you take your outline and toss it out the window?
Well, at a certain point you have to when things happen that you just didn't expect to have happen. But I really start out going, this is the one. This is the one where I'm going to be so organized. I'm going to create a schedule. It's going to be done by June. Never is. Never is. It never works out for me that way. It's just, it becomes this strange, magical process, and I just don't feel like I'm in control of it.
Well, it's like you started out saying, books have a life of their own.
They do.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Okay, I'm going to go back here.
How long did it take you to write the book?
The Boy Who Knew Everything or The Girl Who Could Fly?
Oh, sorry.
Both. Okay, that's a great question. And there's a big, long story to this. But when I tell you how much time, it's going to scare you. So I was working on the screenplay for The Girl Who Could Fly for 2 years. So everyone count with me as I go. It was bought by Paramount. I spent a year in development at Paramount on the screenplay. Wasn't getting made. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I really love this story. I want to get it made. I guess I'm going to have to write a book. Otherwise, it's just not going to get out there. I had never written a book before. It's really hard. It's really different. It took me 2 more years to figure out how to write a book and get it done. Shouldn't have taken that long. It was a long time. Now, The Boy Who Knew Everything, there was a long gap between my books. I had a lot of things happen in my life. I had a child. All of this went on, and it took some time off. So I think when I got going on The Boy Who Knew Everything, it took me about 2 to 3 years. I'm not a fast writer, though. I'm not someone who's going to be writing a book every 6 or 8 months, or probably even 18 months. It's going to be rare, special.
Okay, next question. Oh, we got a question.
Which one did you have the most fun writing?
Oh, that's a great question. I love them both for different ways, in different ways. Piper's journey is about empowerment and finding her voice and, and flying and letting herself fly. And that for me and for girls, I think is really important. And I think that really touches me. And so that's really wonderful. I think The Boy Who Knew Everything is about healing difficult relationships. And that's different. I mean, I love them for different reasons, just like you love your pets for different reasons.
Books as pets, I like this. But not as fluffy.
Not as fluffy.
Okay, next question. Anybody else got a question? Oh, going back over here. Okay.
How long do you think it'll take to write the third book?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for asking. You know, I have lots of people asking me that. My agent, my editor. I think they'd like to know that too. I wish I knew. I would like to get a really, really good draft done, you know, by March or April. I'd really, really, really like to. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll have to see. I hope next year. I hope next year I can get it done. I hope. I get fan letters. Sometimes I get fan letters. A couple fan letters come every week for me, and I love them, and they're so dear to me. But sometimes I'm really scared to open them because donuts to dollars, the first question people ask is, when is your next book coming out? And I sit there at my desk writing, and I'm like so guilty. I feel so badly. So I promise you, as fast as I can write it, it will come out.
I have to ask you, Victoria, donuts to dollars. Is that a Canadian thing?
It must be. We like donuts in Canada.
So I have a question for you about Canada.
Yes.
You talked to us earlier about what it was like to grow up in a log cabin in remote areas of Canada.
Yeah.
How do you think that experience affected your kind of writing about the setting and the people in your books?
Well, it definitely affected the setting in Lowland County and The Girl Who Could Fly. Perhaps a little less so in The Boy Who Knew Everything, just because all those characters in it were characters that had been in my life, and I had seen all those things happen, just weird, quirky things. I probably accentuated it more than is the actual reality. But for instance, as I said, we lived on a dirt road, and there was this family that lived at the dead end of the dirt road, and they were called the McLeods. And they kind of did moonshine, and they were just the strangest people. And, you know, like I had to walk home from school down that a dirt road to get to my house. And they had many children, the McLeods. And to a couple of the boys, you know, they would stop their car and offer us, they were being nice. They were offering us a drive home. And they had this old clunker, and they'd open the door, and, you know, stuff would fall out, and it's just bizarre. And my mother always said, "Don't you take a ride from those boys." So, yeah, life in the country. Gotta love it.
Well, we certainly know about that here in Iowa.
Next question. Who has a question? Oh, good. I got another one.
Would you like your books to be turned into movies?
That's a great question. You know, sure. The short answer is absolutely. I kind of hope that I can get through the whole series before that starts happening, because I really want to keep myself in the bubble of this world. And I feel like once it gets out that big, I'm going to be starting to get a lot more coming back at me from like pressure from people to write certain ways. So I kind of want to keep it the way it is right now. I want to keep myself in my bubble, because I want to keep it pure, because I think there's something very sweet about these stories.
Yes, there definitely is. That actually prompts a related question, like how is writing for movies different from writing a book? Because we've read books, of course, we've all read books, but we haven't read screenplays. We've seen movies, but we haven't seen the screenplay. Yes. So how is that process different?
It's so different because, you know, there's so much more money involved with movies. And so it becomes so collaborative because everyone has to have a say, because everyone is so nervous the movie is not going to work. So you're sitting in a room with like tons of people, and they all have ideas, and you have to incorporate all of them. And it's not that their ideas aren't good. It's not that they don't, but it's just a lot to take in. And I feel like something gets lost sometimes. I think something gets lost.
Do you feel like sometimes with the screenplay process, there's this like moment where it all comes together when everybody is clicking together? Does that ever happen?
I think it does. I never experienced it, but I think other people have. I think other people have. I love the intimacy of books, both writing them and reading them. It's such a direct connection.
Cool. All right, next question. Who else has a question? Okay, cool.
Is writing The Girl Who Could Fly funner than writing the movie?
Yes, absolutely. Writing books, I think, is much more fun than writing movies, definitely, because I can really, really make decisions and keep with them, as opposed to having to take things out all the time because someone doesn't like it. It's lovely working with one editor who shares your vision and who can help you make it better. And that's what really happened. So it was a really great process. I didn't know how to write a book, but once I figured it out, it got better.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to work with an editor? A little more?
Absolutely. For The Girl Who Could Fly, I'd been working on it so long, the editorial process was quite short because it was pretty much done. But for The Boy Who Knew Everything, we had to go through a lot of passes. My editor would ask me questions. She would put little notes in it. Have you thought about this? I was wondering about this. I wasn't quite sure about this. And all our little questions were so well targeted. It was like they opened the story like a flower for me. And I just understood the story better just by her simple questions. It was a wonderful process. And I really believe that being an editor is its own special skill, like a superpower skill. People think that writers can be good editors, and maybe there are some that are good editors, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that editors are their own special species.
Don't they go into your book, at least my experience of editors is there's this one thing that you're trying to fudge or pretend isn't bad, and they go right for that thing, right?
Yes, they do.
It's the editorial genius.
Yes.
So it sounds like your editor really has that.
She's amazing.
Yeah, cool.
She's amazing, really amazing.
Right, next question. Who else has a question? Oh, we have
Yay.
the awesome question asker over here. Here we go.
Has your child read your book?
Well, she's 7, so she's almost there, not quite. I think in another year she will. Her name is Emerson, and she's really into the Penderwicks right now. Have you read the Penderwicks? Oh, they're lovely books. They're lovely, lovely. She's really into those right now. I read them a lot to her. I feel like this book is I think 8, 9. You know what I mean? Like, because there are some things that happen in it that are like, you need to be a little bit more mature.
There are some intense moments.
Yes.
They're awesome, but maybe for a 7-year-old.
Yeah, for a little 7-year-old, I think, unless you're really mature. Are you 7? Okay, I didn't think so. I was just making sure. I didn't want to slight you.
All right, other questions? Oh, great. Here we go. I'm not sure what your history is as a screenwriter. So
Yes.
Did you, when you were writing the screenplay, though, for The Girl Who Could Fly, did you have it set as a young reader or a young audience? Did you know that going in that this was your audience, the young readers or young?
Well, I made it as a family film, so something that the entire family could watch. For younger people with their parents type thing. When I was writing the book, it was just so different because I needed to write it in a way that younger readers could connect. It wasn't the parents, it was the younger readers. So I focused more on the children. I think in the screenplay, there's more moments between the adults that the adults could watch. But in the book, I really tried to stick just with the children. That's a good question, though.
Okay, maybe time for just a couple more questions or one more question. Oh, yeah, we definitely have time for that. Okay.
If it's made into a movie, would you prefer to write the screenplay?
I'm going to have to see. That's a good question. I'm going to have to see. You know, I've really, really fallen in love with writing books. And I know what it's like making a movie. Maybe if I'm at a different point in my life, you know, like if I didn't have a child who was young. If it happened tomorrow, no. But maybe if it happened in 5 or 6 years, maybe. Yeah, that'd be good. We'll see. You know, I'm pretty focused not only on my writing, but my family right now. So I've got to kind of balance them.
So I think there was another question over here. Yeah.
Why does Dr. Mumbly have that accent?
That's a great question. Well, he's German. And so if I do it, I'm just going to do a really bad German accent and I'm just going to like insult everyone. So I'm not even going to try it. But he's German. And so English is his second language. So he has this really thick accent and he kind of stumbles over his words and kind of barks at the kids. Yeah. He's a fun character. I would love to.
Okay, the next person who asks a question has to do it in a German accent.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
For writing books, do you still have time to hang out with your child?
You know, I do. Do you want to know what my daily schedule is like? Okay. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, and I write to about 1 or 2 o'clock, and then I pick her up from school, and then from 2 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I'm with her. And then I go to bed at 9 o'clock exactly because I'm exhausted. And then I do it all over again the next day. That's basically the way I do it. Except I find that in between then there's school trips and various other classroom things I have to do. So I usually get 3 days a week to write. That's about it. But I try for more.
Is there maybe one last question? Oh, more than one. Okay. Here we go.
In the third book, are you going to make Bella Lovely join the rest of the characters?
That is such a great idea. I love that idea. Yes. And it was my idea. I thought of it right now. I'm going to take credit for it. Yes, I will. I actually hadn't thought of that. I haven't got to that part, but I will. Promise. Absolutely. She's a great character, isn't she? It was good to see her again, wasn't it? Because she kind of got lost there for a while. Yeah, it was nice. That's a great idea.
Another question? This is the girl with all the questions.
Yes.
I think you need a book about her.
I love that, though.
Why did you decide to make Dr. Hellion fly?
Ah, that's a great question. Because I wanted there to be a reason why she disliked all these kids or all special abilities so much. I wanted it to be very personal. And I thought, gosh, can you imagine if the person who's most trying to keep Piper down also can do what she does? It's ironic. And I thought that was really powerful. You know what I mean? Sometimes I've found that in my life. Sometimes the people who are my biggest adversary, people who are against me, are struggling with the same things I am. Sort of like some weird thing that goes on.
That's a great question. And I don't think it's too spoilery, but she comes back in book 2.
She's there in the book too.
Yeah,
has a big role.
But in maybe a way you won't expect.
Yes.
I think, after reading the first book.
Yes.
Yeah. Another question? One more? Oh, I think that's maybe it.
Good.
Iowa City, Prairie Lights, can you give a warm round
Thank
of applause
you.
for Victoria Forrester?
Thank
and
you.
I think Victoria's going to sign